She betrayed me. That's what Prince Harry allegedly whispered moments before stepping up to the microphone, his hands trembling slightly, eyes refusing to meet the cameras directly. The press room at Clarence House was packed. Reporters were breathless. Royal advisors stood rigid. And somewhere in the back, a lone camera operator muttered, "Is this really happening?" Because no one, absolutely no one, expected what came next. Prince Harry, the rebellious royal, the Duke of Netflix, the man who once defiantly walked away from royal life for freedom, suddenly stood alone. Without Meghan by his side, without a prepared legal statement, without a single excuse. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Just raw eyes, a fractured voice, and a single shocking sentence. I owe my family an apology. Wait, what? Why would Harry, after years of televised interviews, best-selling memoirs, and explosive allegations against the royal family, suddenly reverse course? What could possibly trigger a man to publicly bow his head before the very institution he once accused of racism, neglect, and indifference? What had changed? The answer, like all the most dangerous truths, had been hiding in plain sight. It started with a single financial transfer. An irregular transaction flagged by a curious compliance officer. A name, one Meghan Markle had used before. A whisper turned into a leak. A leak turned into a storm. And then came the discovery of a hidden bank account. Not just hidden from the public. Not just hidden from the crown. But hidden from Harry. You read that right. The Duchess of Sussex, champion of transparency, feminist icon, activist, mother of two, and Netflix's Golden Duchess, had been allegedly siphoning funds into a secret offshore account. And not just any account. One tied to shadowy consultants, global PR firms, and hush-money payments no one wanted to talk about. And when Harry found out, he collapsed. Figuratively, yes. But some say literally, too. The last few months have been a slow-motion unraveling of everything the Sussex brand was built on. Trust, authenticity, shared struggle, united rebellion. But behind the curated photos, the Oprah-approved soundbites, and the tear-filled podcast came something far more sinister. And the first real crack? It came not from a palace leak or a tabloid sting. It came from inside the house. Now, you might be wondering, why should we care? Haven't we had enough royal drama? Enough confessions? Enough tears, tiaras, and tell-alls? But this one is different. Because for the first time, the betrayal wasn't coming from the palace. It was coming from Meghan. And Harry, the once blind prince, had finally opened his eyes. But before we dive into offshore accounts, emotional blackmail, and Charles's chilling royal ultimatum, let's rewind. Let's return to the moment the apology happened. The moment the world froze. London's air was cold that morning. Not winter cold, but that sharp, metallic chill that hangs when something unnatural is brewing. The kind of weather that seems to hum with invisible tension. Clarence House, usually shielded from tabloid mayhem, was suddenly swarmed by press vans. There had been whispers, yes, that Harry was back in the UK, that he was here without Meghan, that something was about to break. But no one knew it would be this. Inside the small press room, a red velvet curtain swayed slightly. A podium stood center stage, flanked by two royal guards. Unusual for a family matter, which this was being described as. The media invite was vague. A brief, personal address from the Duke of Sussex. Speculation ran wild. Was this a divorce announcement? A new royal project? Another attack on the monarchy? No one predicted what they saw. Harry entered, not in a designer suit, but a modest navy coat. No security detail. No iPad or statement folder in hand. Just a folded piece of paper and a face pale as fog. And then he spoke. No lawyer. No PR spin. Just truth. Or at least, his version of it. And it shook the royal establishment. The cracks before the collapse. Let's be honest. Harry and Meghan's post-royal journey hasn't exactly been smooth. Yes, they signed blockbuster deals. Yes, they gave iconic interviews. And yes, they became a modern-day Bonnie and Clyde for those obsessed with royal scandal. But even the most curated fairy tales start to fray. Behind the Netflix glitz were rumors about excessive spending, internal arguments, staff turnover. The Archewell Foundation, once touted as a beacon of compassion and action, had financial filings that raised more questions than answers. Behind the smiles, distance. between Harry and the royals, between Meghan and Hollywood. Even, some say, between Harry and Meghan. There were whispers of infighting. That Harry had grown tired of being the punchline in U.S. comedy shows. That Meghan wanted to pivot back into acting, alone. That deals were falling through. That Spotify was disappointed. That their neighbors in Montecito weren't exactly welcoming. And then came the leak. The quiet leak heard round the world. It began as a whisper from a junior accountant in a Los Angeles compliance firm. A red flag transaction. A transfer labeled consulting services with no legitimate client attached. At first, it seemed like a fluke. But then the name on the account matched one tied to Meghan's past business dealings. The address linked to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. The deposits? Over $11 million in less than 18 months. That's not royalty money. That's operation money. Sources say the funds were coming from PR firms, discreet media partnerships, and curiously, even arch-well-related vendors. Money that was supposed to go into production, charity work, and media development being funneled elsewhere. And none of it, none, was declared to Harry. When he found out, that's when the dominoes began to fall. From rage to regret. Insiders close to the Sussex household say Harry's reaction wasn't immediate fury, it was disbelief. He refused to believe Meghan could keep something so massive from him. He confronted her. She denied it. He pushed. She spun. But the numbers didn't lie. Not only was the account real, but it had been opened right after their Netflix deal was inked. The first deposit? Just weeks after their Oprah interview aired. And guess what? One of the earliest payees? A luxury PR fixer known for burying scandals, not building brands. Harry, always the idealist, finally saw the machinery behind the curtain. And it broke him. He left Montecito in the dead of night. No security. No official royal travel. He arrived in the UK unannounced. And 3 days later, he stood in front of that microphone and said the unthinkable. I owe my family an apology. But he didn't stop there. This wasn't just a vague public statement. Harry named names. He admitted to being manipulated. He acknowledged the damage done to his father, his brother, the institution, and yes, the nation. He didn't spare himself, either. He spoke of his blind spots, his emotional impulsivity, and his need to believe in love even when it comes at a cost. And then, he made a confession. One no one saw coming. I was warned, he said. William warned me. My father warned me. Even my grandmother warned me. And I ignored them. The room was frozen. Because that admission, that Meghan had been a divisive force all along, wasn't just Harry's confession. It was confirmation. Confirmation that behind the headlines, the lawsuits, the palace silence, something deeper, something darker had been brewing. And now, it was erupting. But what triggered this sudden honesty? That's the question everyone's asking. Why now? Why did Harry break rank, publicly, against Meghan? Why did he reveal this betrayal on his own, before the press could dig deeper? Was it guilt? Fear? A plea for redemption? Or was it something else? Something even more disturbing? Because just days after Harry's apology, someone else came forward. Someone who had everything to lose, and everything to say. And what they revealed would blow this story wide open. Have you ever witnessed a man unravel in real time? Not in private, not behind closed doors, but in front of the world, on royal grounds, under royal flags, with the ghosts of history watching? Because that's exactly what happened when Prince Harry, the once defiant Duke of Sussex, stood in the palace press room and shattered everything we thought we knew. What happens when a prince breaks the script? There's a choreography to royal life. A rhythm. A precision. Words are measured. Faces are masked. Apologies, if they come at all, arrive in carefully scripted statements, reviewed, redrafted, and released at 5 p.m. sharp. But this wasn't a press release. This was a purge. At exactly 11:03 a.m., the double doors creaked open. A hush fell. Phones were already filming. Live streams beamed globally. And then he entered. No military uniform. No medals. No hand-in-hand Meghan by his side. Just Harry. Alone. He looked older. Not in years, but in weight. The kind of weight that clings to a man's shoulders when his world collapses, and he knows he played a part in its destruction. What does a prince look like when the fairy tale ends? Like this. Eyes red. Posture stiff. jaw clenched as if trying to hold back something more than words. The words that stopped the room. "I want to begin by saying something I should have said a long time ago," Harry began, voice quiet but steady. "I was wrong." Gasps. Audible ones. Not from reporters. From staff. Palace staff. People who had known Harry since he was a boy, who had watched him grieve Diana, rebel as a teen, fight in Afghanistan, then fall in love with a California actress and change the entire monarchy's trajectory. They'd seen him through everything. But this wasn't the Harry they knew. "I hurt people I love," he continued. "I believed things that weren't true. I said things I can never take back. And I let someone I loved twist the truth until I couldn't see it anymore." A pause. And then, more quietly, "I owe my brother an apology. I owe my father an apology. And I owe my country the truth." A palace frozen in place. Just down the corridor, Prince William stood behind a closed door. He wasn't seated. He was pacing. He hadn't expected this. No one had. Yes, they knew Harry was back. Yes, they'd allowed the press room. But this wasn't what had been discussed. Harry had gone off script. He was saying too much. Too fast. Too raw. William's aides were in a frenzy. Phones buzzing. Damage control kicking in. But the air didn't move. He listened. And for a moment, the pain in his brother's voice hit a nerve. Not anger. Not vindication. Something older. Grief. Charles, the monarch who waited. King Charles was watching too. From a private study, flanked by senior advisors, his face expressionless. His hands, however, were clenched into fists. Because this wasn't just an apology. It was a confession. A betrayal laid bare. Not by tabloids. Not by anonymous sources. But by his own son. The same son who had accused the firm of racism. Who had dragged Camilla through the media. Who had published a memoir accusing William of physical assault. Now here he was, begging for forgiveness. And all because of her. Because of Meghan. Charles turned to an aide. "One sentence. Send word to Sandringham. Tell them, it's happening." What exactly was happening? No one knew yet. But it would ripple far beyond Clarence House. The journalists. Silenced by shock. Inside the room, journalists. Those same media bulldogs who once dissected Meghan's every outfit and Harry's every speech, sat in stunned silence. No one interrupted. No one shouted questions. It was almost respectful. Because this wasn't a press conference anymore. It was a breakdown. A reckoning. A raw unraveling of everything the Sussexes had sold the world. And as Harry's voice cracked on the word family, even the most jaded reporter lowered their camera. One question floated through everyone's mind. What happened to make him do this? What did Harry discover? What could have possibly turned the most stubborn royal exile into a remorseful, visibly shattered man? The answer? Money. The secret that broke the silence. As Harry continued, he avoided specifics. He didn't mention the offshore account. Not yet. He didn't say Meghan's name. But his message was unmistakable. "I was misled," he said, "into believing that secrecy was safety. That withholding was strategy. That control was love. It was subtle, but it landed like thunder. Control was love." That line, crafted or spontaneous, became the headline heard around the world. Because who had been controlling him? Who had been whispering strategy? And who, according to Harry's own tearful words, had taught him to withhold love from the people who raised him? There was only one answer. The moment William walked in. The tension reached a breaking point when the doors opened again. And in walked William. No fanfare. No statement. Just a stare. He locked eyes with his brother. The air crackled. They hadn't been seen in the same room in nearly a year. Not since the Queen's funeral. And even then, they didn't speak. Now here they were. Inches apart. The air and the spare. And the world held its breath. Harry froze. For a second, just a second, it looked like he might collapse. But William didn't say anything. He simply walked to the back of the room and stood still, arms crossed, listening. For the first time in a long time, the brothers were in the same room. And no one dared move. A glimpse of the old Harry. What followed was heartbreaking. Harry's voice, once proud and defiant in interviews and documentaries, now wavered. He talked of loneliness. Of how fame doesn't fill voids, it deepens them. Of how he had wanted to be seen as his own man, but ended up a shadow in someone else's plan. He recalled one moment in particular. A night in Montecito. Late. Rain tapping the windows. He'd found an envelope. A financial document. Foreign currency. He confronted Meghan. She smiled. That smile, that moment, stayed with him. Because that's when he realized. She didn't care that he found it. She knew he wouldn't leave. Until now. The final confession and sudden exit. I should have seen the signs earlier, Harry said. But I didn't. I couldn't. Or maybe I wouldn't. He looked at the reporters. At the Palisades. At William. And then he said the words that cracked the monarchy open. I let love blind me, and I betrayed those who loved me first. With that, he stepped back. He didn't take questions. He didn't shake hands. He simply turned and walked out the way he came in. The room exploded. The aftershock begins. Phones buzzed. Breaking news alerts blasted across apps. Social media platforms froze from the traffic. Meghan Markle's name trended in 20 countries within minutes. Inside the palace, advisors scrambled to get ahead of the story. But how do you control a wildfire when the spark came from inside? William reportedly left the room without a word. Charles canceled all afternoon engagements. And Meghan? She was still in California, watching it all unfold. But what she did next, what she said to her team, what she planned, that would ignite an entirely new scandal. What was Meghan doing while Harry was apologizing? While Harry stood beneath the chandeliers of Clarence House, publicly unraveling the very narrative she had helped him build, Meghan Markle was thousands of miles away, in Montecito, California. But here's the twist. She wasn't caught off guard. In fact, according to multiple insiders, she knew it was coming. And she was ready to strike back. Sources close to her legal team said she'd already activated crisis protocol. Her PR agency was put on a 24-hour notice cycle. Emergency statements were being drafted. Calls went out to sympathetic Hollywood allies. Talking points were circulated behind the scenes. Harry's struggling with his mental health. He's being manipulated by the firm again. This is a coordinated smear campaign. But those were just whispers. Because Meghan herself? She stayed silent. No social media posts. No paparazzi setups. No staged coffee runs with a casually placed self-help book. Not even a statement from Archwell. Just silence. And in that silence, speculation grew louder than ever. Was she blindsided? Was she guilty? Or was she preparing for a bigger, more dangerous move? Back in London, the fallout begins. Within an hour of Harry's apology, royal advisors went into emergency sessions. This wasn't just a personal matter anymore. This was a constitutional crisis, a global embarrassment, and a PR wildfire. The palace hadn't approved this. The king was not briefed in full. And yet, Harry had done it anyway. He had taken the first public step back toward the family. But would they let him return? And more importantly, should they? William's inner circle divided. Insiders report that Prince William was shaken but unmoved. While some of his senior advisors urged him to issue a brief statement of support, a sign of unity, they said, William refused. Not yet. He needed to see more. I won't be fooled twice, he allegedly told a close aide. This wasn't just about brotherly love anymore. It was about national trust, public duty, and protecting the monarchy from further humiliation. Because behind the palace walls, William had seen the files. He knew what Harry had just barely hinted at. The offshore accounts, the consulting payments, the emails with Marcus Anderson, the private investigators' report that was still being verified by palace intelligence teams. And worst of all, the name Harry appeared in one of the transactions. Not as a recipient, but as a cover. That's when William realized. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a setup. The Queen's letter, unearthed in the storm. As the news cycle exploded, another unexpected twist hit the royal staff. A sealed envelope, found in the Queen's personal study at Windsor, marked only with Harry's name. A letter, handwritten, dated just months before her passing. It had never been delivered. Until now. A courier brought it to Clarence House that evening. And when Harry read it, witnesses say he fell silent for nearly 20 minutes. He didn't speak, didn't move, just held the paper, rereading the words over and over. We don't know the full content of that letter yet, but one phrase was reportedly visible at the top. You must always ask who benefits from your blindness. And just like that, the late Queen's voice entered the conversation. Not through speeches, not through official proclamations, but through a quiet, prescient warning. The world watches and divides. Meanwhile, public reaction was a wildfire. Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube lit up like never before. Some praised Harry, Finally, accountability. The man is healing. Takes courage to admit you were wrong. Others defended Meghan. She's being scapegoated. This smells like royal manipulation. They're throwing her under the bus again. And still others weren't so sure. Why now? Is this all a PR move? What is he hiding? But one thing was undeniable. The tide had turned. Harry was no longer the global victim. He was the man who apologized. And Meghan? She was now the one surrounded by question marks. The body language experts had a field day. You knew this was coming. Within hours, viral clips dissecting Harry's every blink, flinch, and breath were racking up millions of views. His left hand was shaking, classic sign of suppressed guilt. He avoided eye contact when referencing love tells you everything. Notice how he stutters before saying Meghan? He knows what's coming. The world was reading between the lines. And the message? Harry was scared, not of his family, but of what Meghan might do next. Because up until now, she had been silent. But behind the scenes, she was preparing her next move. The Hollywood phone calls. In the hours following Harry's speech, Meghan reportedly reached out to key allies in Hollywood. A well-known morning show host, a streaming executive, a crisis manager who once helped salvage the image of a disgraced billionaire. The message was clear. Spin control starts now. Drafted statements were tested. A woman of color under attack by the institution again. A mother being shamed for financial independence. Private family matters being exploited. But none of them stuck. Because the silence from Harry's side was deafening. He didn't deny anything. He didn't walk anything back. And worst of all, he didn't protect her. Not this time. Inside Montecito, the children, the staff, the storm. According to insiders, the atmosphere in the Sussex mansion was tense and paranoid. Staff were told to lock down all external communications. The children, Archie and Lilibet, were kept away from screens. Meghan reportedly spent hours pacing her private study, phone in hand, speaking in hushed tones. One staffer, who has since resigned, said, "It felt like watching a queen who just realized her throne wasn't real." Security teams increased patrols. Lawyers were mobilized. And in one of the most bizarre turns, Meghan allegedly called a former royal correspondent, someone she'd previously blacklisted, and offered them exclusive access if they told the real story. That offer was declined, because even the press could smell desperation. The silent signal from the palace. Back in London, an even more symbolic moment occurred. Late that night, Buckingham Palace's official website updated its royal family page. Meghan Markle's profile moved below that of Princess Beatrice. A subtle but unmistakable message. She was being phased out. So what comes next? Harry's public apology sent shockwaves. But it wasn't the full story. It wasn't even the beginning of the end. It was just the start of the unraveling. Because the account, the secret account, that wasn't just about money. It was about control, power, and escape. And in the next chapter, we uncover exactly how the leak happened, who knew about it, and why someone from inside Meghan's own camp turned against her. Because betrayal, it turns out, comes in many forms. And the person who exposed her was someone she trusted more than Harry himself. What if the person who brought down your empire wasn't a hater, a troll, or even a stranger, but someone you trusted with your deepest secrets? What if your biggest enemy was wearing your logo, had your passwords, and called you boss? Because the leak that exposed Meghan Markle's hidden bank account didn't come from a royal mole. It came from her own team. Every scandal starts with a slip. It began innocently enough, at least that's what the story claims. A junior compliance officer at a boutique accounting firm in Santa Monica flagged an international wire transfer. It wasn't the amount that raised eyebrows. It was the timing, the destination, and the sender alias. See, the payment was disguised as a strategic consulting fee, but it was routed through a shell company registered in Cyprus, then wired into an account under the name R.M. Harcourt. Sound familiar? Because sharp-eyed royal watchers will remember that Harcourt just happens to be the maiden name of Meghan's maternal great-grandmother, a name she once used during a PR test campaign back in her Suits days. Coincidence? Not a chance. The internal memo that sparked the fire. Within 72 hours of that flag transfer, an internal memo circulated within the compliance firm. The subject line? Possible ethics violation, client 0073. It never named Meghan directly, but the redacted document included project codes known to be tied to Archwell's media arm. In one transaction, it mentioned a Dubai-based firm known for reputation laundering. That's when things got interesting. The junior officer, let's call him Tyler, went to his superior, expected to be shut down, told to look the other way. But instead, his boss paused, checked the numbers, and said, "Do not talk to anyone, not even your roommate. Leave this with me." Within days, that firm's legal team was conducting a quiet investigation. And yet somehow, the memo leaked. But not to the press. Not yet. It landed somewhere far more dangerous. It landed in the inbox of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Meet the whistleblower, Nadia. Nadia isn't her real name. She was a former Archwell employee, mid-level, discreet, efficient. Her official title? Senior Brand Operations Coordinator. Her real job? Make Meghan look good, no matter what. She handled red carpet logistics, coordinated with stylists, vetted social media campaigns, and more importantly, she had limited access to Meghan's financial activity through the foundation's expense approval systems. At first, she thought nothing of it. Everyone assumed Meghan had multiple accounts. She was a global figure, after all. Appearances, projects, fees, private initiatives. But the Dubai payments? That caught her attention. She'd seen the same vendor listed under a charity strategy consulting invoice, only days after a lavish Montecito garden party that mysteriously wasn't on the Archwell calendar. When she inquired about the discrepancy, she was told, "That's above your pay grade. Delete the file from your archive." So she did. But she also saved a copy, just in case. Why would Nadia turn? That's the million-dollar question. Was it money? Revenge? Ethics? None of the above, at least not at first. According to sources close to her, Nadia's breaking point came when she was blamed for a leak that she didn't commit. A draft PR statement from Meghan's inner circle accidentally made its way to an Australian tabloid. It contained language implying that Meghan had been silenced and financially manipulated by the royal family for years. The problem? That line wasn't true. And worse, it wasn't supposed to go public. When the leak happened, Meghan's legal team suspected an internal mole. Nadia was accused. She was told to take some time away. Her emails were cut off. Her login suspended. But what no one realized, she still had the files. And she wasn't just angry. She was done. The data drop. Using an encrypted server, Nadia sent a carefully labeled folder, over 70 megabytes of documents, invoices, emails, and routing slips, to one source. A journalist known only as Lex. Lex wasn't tabloid. Lex didn't do celebrity gossip. Lex covered financial corruption, government fraud, nonprofit abuses, Hollywood laundering. But this was the motherlode. Within hours of receiving the files, Lex reached out to former IRS agents, international finance watchdogs, and even 2 ex-bankers from Zurich. Quietly, behind the scenes, they began authenticating the documents. And what they found sent shivers down their spines. Because this wasn't just a case of tax evasion or financial misconduct. This was a strategic funneling of brand funds, donations, and undisclosed appearance fees into an account that led to offshore networks known to be used by global elites. And the name at the center? Meghan Markle. The email that proved everything. Among the files was a single email. Short, casual, and timestamped. To m.markle@archwell.mail. From private@sohocom.co.uk. Re. Harcourt. All clear. Money's in. Keep it tight. London guy says he's covered for next quarter. They'll pin it on project development, if needed. Let that sink in. All clear. Money's in. There it was. Confirmation that the Harcourt account wasn't a glitch. It was part of an active strategy. The London guy? We'll get to him in Chapter 3. But what matters now is that Harry's name appeared in the recipient list of another forwarded version of that same email months later. He never opened it, but he was looped in, which begs the question, was he ever truly blind? Or just selectively looking away? Lex's dilemma, publish or perish. Lex now had enough evidence to light a media firestorm. But publishing this story came with risks. Legal threats, blacklisting, PR smear campaigns, and something even more dangerous, being wrong. So Lex did what responsible journalists do. He sat on it, cross-checked every detail, had the files reviewed by 2 forensic accountants. one of whom had previously worked with the British Royal Audit Office. When the second accountant confirmed that the pattern of transactions showed clear intent to obfuscate income, Lex knew this wasn't just a leak. This was a bombshell. But he needed one more thing: a public figure to validate the findings. Someone inside the palace. Someone brave enough to confirm it wasn't fabricated. And that's where it all turned. Because before Lex could publish, word of his investigation leaked. And it reached someone who had the power to stop it all. Prince William. The secret meeting, William and Lex. Yes, it happened. Not at Buckingham. Not in Kensington. But in a nondescript estate outside Norfolk, borrowed from a longtime family friend. No cameras. No aides. Just two men. One envelope. Lex laid out the findings. The payments. The offshore accounts. The emails. William didn't speak for 10 minutes. When he finally did, he reportedly said, I told Harry she was building an empire behind his back. And then, he handed Lex a flash drive. We don't know what was on it, but it's rumored to contain corroborating evidence from inside the Royal Finance Office. Whatever it was enough. Lex published, and within hours, the internet exploded. And Harry? He knew he couldn't hide anymore. The leak was only the beginning. What followed Lex's article was unlike anything seen in royal history. The palace didn't deny it. Archwell didn't respond. Meghan went silent. And Harry? He packed a bag, flew home, and called Clarence House, not to deny, but to apologize. But what came next was worse than anyone expected. Because the Harcourt account was just the surface. There was a second account, bigger, older, and it was tied to someone even more powerful than Meghan. Someone with connections in New York, Hollywood, and Windsor. And their name would send shockwaves through the monarchy. But that's the story in Phase 3. What if Meghan wasn't the only one? You thought the hidden account was the end of the story? The big reveal? Not even close. Because just as the world tried to digest Meghan's Harcourt account, an even more devastating question emerged. What if Meghan wasn't acting alone? What if someone inside the institution, someone with a royal title, insider access, and the trust of both Charles and Harry, was part of the operation? What if this wasn't just a betrayal between spouses? What if it was a setup, years in the making? The mysterious second account. 3 days after Lex's first bombshell went live, he received another anonymous tip. Encrypted email. No subject line. Just coordinates for a secure drop site. A dead drop in an underground parking garage near Mayfair. Yes, it sounds like a spy movie. But that's how deep this rabbit hole goes. Lex retrieved a flash drive containing over 500 pages of transaction logs, email screenshots, and something chilling. A second offshore account, registered in Luxembourg, under the name A. Spencer Gates. Sound familiar? It should, because Spencer was Princess Diana's maiden name, and Gates was the surname of Meghan's former commercial attorney. Coincidence? Again, not likely. Who was behind this second account? Forensic financial analysts reviewing the second account noticed two disturbing patterns. Large incoming deposits from shell corporations tied to North American PR firms. Outgoing transfers to individuals connected with European luxury property brokers. And one name kept popping up. Not Meghan, not Marcus, but someone close to Harry. Lady Julia Spencer Gates. You probably haven't heard of her. She's not front-page material. She was a distant cousin of Diana's. Former fashion consultant. Quietly married into a lesser-known noble family in Belgium. But what matters is this. She was part of Meghan's inner circle during the early suits to Duchess transition. Photos show her attending private dinners with Meghan, escorting her to boutique fittings in London, and even accompanying her on 2 international flights during the Netflix deal negotiations. No one ever asked what her role was. Until now. Because this second account, it was in her name, and it was being used to route money from deals connected to Meghan's brand. And from the looks of it, even Harry's brand. Was Harry's image being monetized without his knowledge? Let's pause. Think about what this means. The Sussex name had been used to push book deals, media campaigns, and brand partnerships. But what if only half the duo was getting paid? What if Harry's name and likeness were being sold, but the profits were being channeled elsewhere? Not through Archwell, not through official partnerships, but into secret accounts tied to Meghan's allies? Multiple entries from the second account showed consulting services, fees associated with a documentary Harry wasn't credited in, merchandising agreements featuring Harry's military career, and even a fragrance deal that used the phrase Royal Rebellion with Harry's silhouette in the ad mock-up. And Harry? He hadn't signed off on any of it. He didn't even know it existed. Until the leak. The phone call that changed everything. According to insiders, once Lex verified the second account and its suspicious activity, he reached out again. Not to William this time, but to Harry's personal representative. The call was brief, quiet, but it hit like a hammer. Lex reportedly said, "This goes deeper than Harcourt. You need to see this." Within 24 hours, Harry met with Lex in person. In a small townhouse owned by a long-trusted royal security officer, Lex laid everything out. Every payment, every timestamp, every name. Harry didn't speak for the first hour. He just stared, and then he got up, walked into the next room, and screamed. Harry's emotional breakdown. This wasn't just financial betrayal. This was identity theft on a global scale. He'd left his family, burned bridges, walked away from titles, all for love. And now that love had, allegedly, turned him into a commodity, a pawn, a puppet dancing on strings he didn't even know were attached. Lex recalled that Harry kept muttering one phrase over and over. "They said I was paranoid, but I wasn't paranoid enough. The other victims? You won't believe who's involved." Here's the part that stunned even the investigative team. Among the payment recipients from the second account, a junior producer from a now-canceled Netflix project about modern royalty, a celebrity life coach who appeared briefly in one of Meghan's podcast episodes, a California-based tech consultant listed as a data strategist, with no obvious connection to Archewell. And get this, a former employee of Prince Andrew's old PR team. Yes, you read that right. This person had worked during Andrew's disastrous interview era, was fired, then relocated to LA. How did they end up back in royal-adjacent circles? And more importantly, who brought them in? All evidence pointed to one name. Marcus Anderson. Marcus Anderson, the fixer behind the curtain. He's been called Meghan's best friend, her gatekeeper, her Soho House connection. But now, he might be something else entirely. Emails between Lady Spencer Gates and Marcus, recovered from the flash drive, showed coded discussions about media pivots, protected funnels, and even RHA, which Lex believes stands for Royal Harry Assets. Marcus had influence. He wasn't just coordinating Meghan's calendar. He was overseeing the architecture of her brand. And some of those structures weren't built to last. They were built to hide. And now, they were crumbling. The palace's response, controlled fury. Once the second account became known to palace security, the reaction was swift. For the first time, Charles authorized a full-scale financial audit of all Sussex-related royal expenditures, including residuals from events, staff payments, and security costs during the transition period after Megxit. William reportedly demanded a list of all past joint projects with Meghan, anything that could have been monetized without Harry's knowledge. Legal teams were briefed. Diplomats were notified. Offshore banking partners were quietly contacted. This wasn't about punishing Meghan. This was about protecting the crown. Meanwhile, in Montecito, Meghan acts. As reports began leaking that a second account existed, Meghan's team launched into overdrive. Paparazzi were spotted near her estate. Lawyers began issuing pre-litigation threats to multiple media outlets, including Lex's publication. A scheduled podcast appearance was abruptly canceled. And one source close to her inner circle said, "She's terrified of what else they might find." Because if the second account had ties to hidden deals, what else was out there? A third account? Blackmail payments? Royal hush money? No one knows. Not yet. But what we do know is this. Meghan Markle's empire is no longer untouchable. The brand, once seen as sleek, progressive, and powerful, is now riddled with questions, contradictions, and cash trails. And Harry? He's no longer the man defending her. He's the man uncovering the truth. And the closer he gets to the center, the more dangerous it becomes. Because in Chapter 3, he discovers the real reason this account existed in the first place. And it wasn't just to hide money. It was to buy silence. But silence from who? And what exactly were they hiding? You'll find out next. If money talks, then what do millions in offshore accounts scream? Because what Harry uncovered next wasn't just shocking. It was paralyzing. The Harcourt account was a scandal. The Luxembourg account was a betrayal. But this one was a weapon. A weapon built from silence, shielded by secrecy, and buried so deeply in Meghan's world that even her closest allies didn't know it existed, until now. The Shadow Vault. It was never supposed to be found. Hidden under layers of shell companies, registered to an anonymous trust in the Cook Islands, the third account was labeled only with a numerical code. CYP 4-72. No names, no addresses, no signatures, just transactions. Dozens of them. But what made this account different wasn't the volume of money. It was the nature of the withdrawals. Because the funds weren't being used to buy homes or handbags. They were being used to buy people. Who gets paid to stay quiet? The moment Lex decrypted the documents tied to CYP 4-72, his stomach dropped. There were names. Not of celebrities. Not of stylists or agents. But of ordinary people. A driver in Toronto. A hotel concierge in Johannesburg. A housekeeper from Nottingham Cottage, the Sussex's former UK residence. An estate lawyer in Los Angeles. A former nurse at Cedars-Sinai. And one chilling pattern? Every payment was followed by a non-disclosure agreement. These weren't contractors. These were witnesses. Witnesses to what, exactly? That's what Harry needed to find out. And fast. The folder in the fireproof safe. According to reports from inside the Montecito estate, Harry confronted Meghan after receiving confirmation of CYP 4-72. She denied it flatly, claimed she had no idea what he was talking about. But when Harry asked for access to the downstairs office safe, the one Meghan kept locked behind biometric access, she refused, said it was for sensitive legal documents. That night, Harry called in a favor from a private security contact in LA. By morning, the safe was open. Inside, one folder. Plain, beige, unmarked, except for a single handwritten label. If he ever turns. Let that sink in. If he ever turns. What kind of woman prepares a file titled for her husband's betrayal? What did she know would come out? And more importantly, what had she spent years trying to keep in? Inside the file, controlled exposure. The folder didn't contain photos or financial statements. It contained strategy. Inside were printed screenshots of text messages between Meghan and multiple unnamed handlers, bullet-pointed plans for media retaliation, suggested narratives in the event of emotional separation, even a list titled Controlled Exposure Points, Harry Edition. It included key childhood trauma soundbites, including Diana-related references, phrases to activate empathy in U.S. audiences, past drug use, not new, but reframed for sympathy. Potential moral leverage in custody discussions. And at the bottom of the page, one note, circled in red ink. He must never feel abandoned. Keep him engaged until final pivot. This wasn't a marriage strategy. It was a war manual. And for the first time, Harry saw it. Black and white. Ink and paper. The relationship wasn't built on trust. It was built on timing. On leverage. On exit plans. And now, he was the exit. The Monaco transaction. Among the CYP 4-72 bank files was one more red flag. A large payment, nearly $890,000 US, wired to a bank in Monaco. The recipient? A well-known crisis management consultant known for scrubbing scandals off the internet. The payment was marked, retention, June installment. This was months before the Oprah interview. Months before Meghan's Spotify meltdown. Months before Harry even thought about walking away from the royal family. Meaning, she was planning for the fallout long before it ever happened. And the fallout wasn't from the palace. It was from Harry. She didn't just expect him to break. She planned for it and insured herself accordingly. The nurse's NDA. Remember the nurse from Cedars-Sinai? Her name appears in the withdrawal ledger for CYP 4-72 under a coded entry labeled postnatal staff, non-public fee. The amount? $215,000. For a non-public fee? Let's go deeper. The nurse, whose name we won't publish here, was part of the private delivery team during Lilibet's birth. She was later seen entering the Sussex property in Montecito. 3 weeks later, she left California, moved to Portugal, changed her name, deleted all social media, and then nothing. Until now. Because her name was tied to an NDA with a 15-year silence clause. Who pays a nurse $250,000 to stay quiet for 15 years? And about what? This isn't conspiracy theory territory. This is banking documentation. Factual, stamped, signed, and protected with so many layers of encryption that even Lex took days to crack it. Which begs the most chilling question of all. What was Meghan hiding that was so explosive she needed to build a financial fortress to bury it? Harry's rage and his resolve. Insiders say Harry didn't cry this time. He didn't scream. He went quiet, collected, methodical. He packed 3 bags. One of them carried every document from the safe, every printed screenshot, every CYP 4-72 file. And then he left Montecito. This time, he didn't tell Meghan where he was going. He didn't leave a note. He flew commercial, alone, landed in London, showed up at Clarence's house, and reportedly told his father, "I have proof." The king's reaction, not what you'd expect. When Charles read through the documents, he didn't explode. He didn't sigh. He didn't ask for a drink. He simply said, "I suspected, but I never imagined this." He summoned William, privately, and together, the 3 men, the king, the heir, and the prodigal son, sat in silence. Then Harry added, "It's not just about the money. She was ready to destroy me, to erase me, to rewrite the narrative if I ever broke away." William reportedly looked at him and said, "She already did." But the final blow? It wasn't in the account. In the last page of the folder, tucked behind a fake bottom, was a printed itinerary, a list of media contacts, phone calls, meetings, and one final bullet. August 2024, initial contact with New York Times journalist the Royal Divorce Papers Project. Wait, what? Divorce papers? As early as 2024? While still projecting unity, love, and Netflix glow. While filming documentaries about surviving together? The betrayal wasn't just emotional or financial. It was strategic. She had the exit mapped out and was setting up her version of the truth before Harry even saw the cliff coming. But now that he's seen it, he's building a bridge to the other side. And in Chapter 4, we expose the receipts, the luxury gifts, the coded invoices, the buried transactions, and how they paint a damning picture of Meghan's financial trail. And it all starts with a bracelet. The bracelet that opened the floodgates. Sometimes, it's not the millions that raise alarms. It's the little things. The overlooked expenses. The luxury item tucked behind a vague invoice. The so-called gift that doesn't align with any event or known recipient. That's exactly what happened with the bracelet. It wasn't flashy, at least not at first glance. A Cartier love bracelet, yellow gold, engraved with a quote in Latin, Veritas numquam perit. Translation, truth never perishes. Irony, anyone? The item was billed under consulting fees, event coordination, in an Archwell Foundation expense report dated 5 months after the Spotify deal collapsed. But here's the twist. That bracelet never appeared in any public photos of Meghan. Not on her. Not on Harry. Not on staff. Not gifted to friends. Because it wasn't for show. It was currency. Following the bracelet's trail, the Cartier bracelet was traced to a London boutique specializing in discreet celebrity purchases. One that operates under a private client's program, codeword access, anonymous couriers, no receipts issued to the buyer's name. But Lex's investigation uncovered something rare, an internal delivery log obtained from a former boutique staffer. Delivery address: Soho House, Greek Street, London. Attention, M.A. Yes, Marcus Anderson. Not Meghan. Not Harry. Marcus. And listed under the buyer notes section was a single phrase. Confirm delivery discreetly. No signature. Why would Meghan's private foundation funds be used to purchase a nearly $12,000 bracelet sent to her best friend? And more importantly, why hide it? The bracelet was just the beginning. Once Lex started digging, a pattern emerged. Between Q3 of 2022 and Q2 of 2024, Archwell Foundation's internal records showed a series of consulting and PR branding payments, all routed through mid-tier shell agencies. On the surface, legal. Underneath, suspicious. Each of these expenses, ranging from $8,000 to $120,000, coincided with moments of public tension for the Sussexes. Bad press, new consultants hired, royal scandal brewing, sudden donations to unknown charities. Meghan under fire? A private stylist or luxury consultant suddenly receives a large strategy retainer. And yet, there were no deliverables, no products, no reports, nothing that justified the scale or timing of these payments. Except one thing: silence, the lavish list. Let's take a closer look at a few of the most shocking items discovered in Lex's ledger analysis. $75,000 to a luxury gifting company in Milan. The vendor lists themselves as a celebrity loyalty service. No known product delivered. Payment made days after the Lilibet christening controversy. $22,500 to a former royal aide turned media training consultant. This individual had worked with Fergie in the early 2000s. The payment was flagged by Meghan's former bookkeeper as odd. Shortly after, the bookkeeper was fired. $98,400 to a Montecito-based PR fixer who specializes in burying celebrity scandals. The payment came just 72 hours after British tabloids received an anonymous tip about Meghan's half-sister, Samantha Markle, preparing a bombshell lawsuit. $11,000 flat cash withdrawal listed as childcare reimbursement. No childminder or agency was ever listed or contacted. Yet the same week, a paparazzi photo of Meghan and the kids was pulled offline under murky copyright claims. Each of these payments shared one thing in common. They weren't categorized as personal expenses. They were billed as foundation operations, meaning Meghan didn't just hide the spending from Harry. She masked it under a charitable umbrella. And that isn't just immoral. It's potentially illegal. Harry's legal advisor steps in. By now, Harry had enough. He wasn't just humiliated. He wasn't just heartbroken. He was angry. He contacted his own legal advisor, separate from the Archwell legal team. Someone not connected to Meghan, her Hollywood reps, or the palace system. A financial integrity expert with experience prosecuting fraud within nonprofits. And after a brief review of the files, this advisor allegedly said, "If this hits the IRS before you go public, you'll be dragged into the fire with her." That's when the clock started ticking. Harry had a choice to make. Protect Meghan and risk being charged as complicit, or expose her and begin the long road back to public trust. We already know which one he chose. But what we don't know yet is how close she came to dragging him into a federal scandal. The FBI advisory letter. Let this next part really sink in. Just days before Harry's public apology, a document surfaced in a New York law firm's email archive. It was a routine advisory letter sent by a regional IRS legal liaison to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Subject: unusual activity. Archwell linked 990 discrepancies. The letter wasn't an indictment. It wasn't a raid. It was a heads-up. But here's the thing. The moment a nonprofit organization becomes the subject of an interagency advisory, all their historical filings come under secondary review. That means every penny tied to Archwell, every sponsorship, every donor benefit, every strategic consulting line item is now fair game. And who signed the 990 easy forms for those tax years? Not just Meghan. Harry's name is on them too. William's warning replayed in his mind. Remember in Chapter 1 when Harry admitted William warned him? This was what he was talking about. Years ago, long before Megxit, before Oprah, before Netflix, William had asked him, "Have you looked at her numbers?" Harry had laughed. He thought it was jealousy. Classism. But William wasn't trying to hurt him. He was trying to save him. Now, as Harry stared at the IRS communication and the forensic report in his hands, he realized William had been right all along. Back in Montecito, a storm brews. Meghan still hadn't responded publicly, but insiders claim she was livid behind the scenes. When Harry left with the CYP for -72 documents, she reportedly called him unstable and obsessed with destroying himself. Staff say she began compiling her own timeline of events, preparing a counter-documentation narrative. What does that mean? It means she's preparing to accuse Harry of financial mismanagement, to flip the script, to claim that he was the one who approved these payments, that he was the one signing blindly, that she trusted him, and he let the team down. It's a risky move, but Meghan knows one thing very well. In the court of public opinion, the fastest storyteller wins. Unless Harry beats her to the punch. So what was the purpose of it all? If Meghan had Netflix money, Spotify deals, $1 million wardrobe, and A-list friends, why hide funds? Why lie? Why route charitable money through secret channels? The answer: according to Lex and multiple investigators, comes down to three things. 1. Power. Silence costs money. Control costs more. The hidden account allowed her to maintain control over her image, her narrative, and the people who knew too much. 2. Insurance. If Harry ever turned, if the press turned, if the monarchy turned, she had resources. Untouchable ones. She wasn't dependent on the crown, or even on Harry. 3. Exit strategy. Everything pointed to it. The private conversations with lawyers, the off-the-record journalist meetings, the slow creation of an independent brand separate from Sussex. She was never building a palace. She was building a parachute, the cliffhanger that changes everything. As Chapter 3 closes, there's one final reveal. A security camera screenshot, leaked from a discreet London property Meghan once rented under a corporate alias, shows a shadowy figure entering the premises in the early morning hours, carrying a manila envelope. That envelope is believed to contain the original access credentials for CYP 4-72. And the man in the photo? He's not Marcus Anderson. He's not a lawyer. He's not even part of the Archewell staff. He's the royal aide, an active member of King Charles's advisory team. Which means what? Someone from inside the palace helped Meghan set this up. But why? And who else knew? In Chapter 4, everything explodes. Because the secret ally behind Meghan's financial empire is finally revealed. And when you find out who it is, you'll understand why this story was never just about money. It was about revenge. What if every gift you ever saw Meghan Markle wear, the diamonds, the handbags, the whispered symbolic gestures, was actually part of a hidden trail? Not of romance, but of manipulation. Because that Cartier bracelet? It wasn't a gift from Harry. It wasn't a token of love. And it definitely wasn't sentimental. It was part of a buried purchase history that would expose one of the boldest deceptions in royal history. And the truth behind who paid for it would shake the foundations of Buckingham Palace. The bracelet that everyone saw, but no one noticed. Let's rewind to that now infamous Cartier love bracelet. Yellow gold, classic lock-in design, often seen peeking out from under Meghan's sleeve during public appearances. It first appeared during a 2020 Zoom call, then again during the Oprah interview, and most memorably, during Meghan's keynote speech at a UN Women event in New York. Fans speculated it was a romantic gift from Harry, maybe to mark Lilibet's birth. But the reality? Far less poetic. Because a newly surfaced internal invoice listed the bracelet not as a personal expense, but as a line item under Strategic Brand Relations, Loyalty, Gift number 37. Gift number 37? Wait, how many loyalty gifts were there? According to the document's serial coding, at least 63. And the Cartier bracelet? It went to someone very specific. Not Meghan, not Marcus, but a royal household staffer, one who used to report directly to Prince Charles. Meet the courier, the royal staffer who turned. For legal reasons, we'll refer to her as E. She was mid-level, quiet, discreet, a logistics manager inside Clarence House. She had no public profile, no photos, no scandals, but she had access to calendars, schedules, staff lists, travel manifests, gift registries, shipment authorizations. And in early 2020, she made a choice. She began communicating with Meghan's team through encrypted apps, burner emails, and even hand-delivered packages. In exchange for what? Not money, not right away, but gifts, luxury items, spa trips, designer shoes. The Cartier bracelet was her confirmation token, her loyalty pin, a golden silence retainer, worn not on her wrist, but kept in a safe deposit box in Chelsea, where it was later discovered by UK investigators during a quiet financial surveillance sting. How the purchase was buried. You might ask, how does a $12,000 bracelet not raise red flags? Simple. It was buried beneath layers of invoice splitting. An old accounting trick, usually used by corporations to avoid triggering audits. The payment was broken into 4 parts. $2,800, brand consulting services. $3,200, publicist briefing sessions. $4,100, event prep materials. $1,900, client transportation logistics. None of those descriptions say bracelet, but combined, they equal exactly £8,000 at the exchange rate on the day of the purchase. Clever? Too clever. Because while the receipts looked clean, The product log from the supplier told the truth. Same date, same amount, same delivery address. And the item? Cartier Love Bracelet, custom engraved. Order ref MMR 37. Busted. Why would Meghan bribe a royal staffer? The big question. Why would Meghan, or someone on her team, send luxury gifts to a palace logistics coordinator? Well, think about it. Who controls? When the royals travel? Who gets scheduled into family events? Which media outlets get advanced notice of official appearances? And who gets removed from Christmas invites, quietly and without a trace? Wasn't a high-ranking figure, but she was the gatekeeper of movement, of access, of exclusion. And Meghan? She needed to know the royal family's moves before they made them. Because in the media game, timing